Hello and welcome to my video on creating Cedric Scrappy Squirrel. So we now have the pattern pieces cut out for our squirrel, and you can see that I've marked the dots and the two darts on the thigh there, and also this wire placement guide I've just marked out, but that is just a guide. You'll see that later where you may want to change it slightly. And all I do is put a pin through the dots, and then once I've cut out the pattern pieces I can transfer those quite easily. So go ahead and cut out the pattern pieces and then cut out your pattern accordingly. So for example, I put on there cut 2 for the tail, 1 for the belly, etc. It's all marked up anyway. So what we're going to start with is the body itself. So we've got the body back and the back of the head, the body front and the front of the head, its belly and the top of its head. So first thing to do is the back of the head, join those two components there along that one, and then this one like this, and you'll notice how I've done that. For the back of the body I've put the headpiece underneath, because when that's stitched together then the seam will be on the inside. And for the front of the body, the head is on the top, because when that's stitched the head, the seam will be again on the inside. So do those two first. So we've just done those two seams along there and I've snipped it, and now we're going to put the back to the front. So join up the dot at the bottom, join the seam, and then join the dot at the top and sew all the way down like that. So that's that seam done now. If you find it difficult, start at the join, or the dot on the join, and go down to the back, and then start again and go to the front, because there are opposing curves on there. So now we're going to fit the head, and it says on the pattern, this is the corner that you join to the seam. So you join that at the seam there and go round to join the dots at the front. So it's from there to the first seam, and I do it in 2 stages. Do that bit first and then start again there, join that dot there, and then go down to the nose to join that dot there. So that's how we fit the head. I will pin it so you can just get a better idea. There you go, I think that's a bit clearer. So you're joining one corner to the seam and then right round to the point at the base and joining the dots. So there's the top of the head attached. You've got one corner to the seam, and then you'll join it just at the nose there on the dot there. And the next thing to do is to come down as far as here. That dot there joins with this seam, so this is actually his nose. So we come down here and along up to that, and you stop there, because then we've got his belly going in that point. So that's the dot to the seam. So we're now going to fit the belly. So sorry, I've just done that little section there. So that's from the pointy nose, the base of the nose, and it's up to that seam on the other side, on the front. So now we're going to fit the belly, and you'll see one side is quite long and then this is the shorter side. So the longer side goes to the back. So best to start at the point, I think. And if you, I mean, I don't usually pin it, but if you pin it in place, you'll find that it'll line up with either a seam like there or another dot, and then the next 2 dots and I would say finish at that dot and this dot, because that gives you the tail end to stuff it. So pin and stitch down that side, and then do the same, lining up the dots as you go down this side of the belly. Line up those dots, and again finish on that dot there, so you've got the back end to stuff it with. So I've pinned it in place. I don't know if that makes it any clearer, but so the real pointy end is at the chin, and then joining the dots either side and then at the back as well. So we're going to stitch that in place up to this point here. I've added now the belly to our squirrel. So started at this point, the head, run round matching the dots to the last dot there, and then started again here to the last dot and left that open for the stuffing. So there he is, taking shape now, and that is ready to stuff. Make sure you get a nice shape to the head, and there's the nose there, that pointy bit. Make sure you get a nice shape to the head, and nice and firm in the nose. And then you've got his chest, his curved back, and we're putting thighs on him anyway, so he'll have extra contours around the thighs. So I've just stuffed our squirrel and finished it off at the base, closed the gap there, and you can see where my marks are. My dots are a bit prominent actually, but at least you can see where they match up. And make sure you get a nice nose on him, pointy nose, and nice curved back. So next thing, I think if we stitch the tail, there's two dots there, just straightforward, go around and stitch that, so then that can be turned through, and you're going to put wire in there, 2mm galvanised wire, to go up into the corner and back. So that's quite straightforward, but just make sure when you put the wire in that it stays on the outer edge, because that will give you a little bit more flexibility if you want to move it around a little bit. Not much, because it will crease the fabric, but at least it will give you some flexibility. And then also do the two thighs, the two little darts on the thighs, and that's actually what we're going to do next, put those onto the squirrel. So I've put my 2mm galvanised wire in there, and it's gone right to the point, and I've put the pins in to keep it to the edge of the tail, because we really want it to be at the top and the bottom of the tail itself. You might need some help with this because the wires begin to spring back again, but once you've got a bit of wadding inside, it does it makes it easier, but you have to get the wadding inside. And if you can, obviously try and get it right down to the tip. And I use a paintbrush, a long thin paintbrush, one of those little cheapy ones that you get, that help at least get right down to the tip there. But I say, once you start, then it makes life a bit easier, but you've really got to fiddle with it to try and keep the wire to the outside edge and right into the point if you can. So stuff that as well as you like. Now this actually though, I'm going to patch this again, but if you've got access to a nice furry fabric for a squirrel's tail, then that would be lovely too. I'm still on the lookout for it, but yes, you could either do this in the shell and patch, or you could do it in the shell and use a fluffy fabric on it, or maybe just make this totally out of a fluffy fabric. So the choice is yours, and it's all nice for them all to be quite different anyway. But anyway, carry on stuffing that to give it a nice shape. So that's the tail stuffed, and only just go up to about there, because this has got to be attached obviously, and we're going to patch this now and patch up to about there as well, because obviously you've got a little bit of finagling to do to attach that to the body. If you find that it's uneven, use one of these big pins and just move it around. You can manipulate it quite easily with that, because it's quite a long thin thing to stuff, so with doing that then you might be able to get a little bit more in there. With the legs, you've got 4 that I would suggest you cut out in finished fabric. I'm not actually keen, I like this, but anyway, we'll go with it for the moment. So just stitch those right sides together, and there is a dot on the fabric, the pattern, to show you where to stitch to. So down either side on both of those right sides together. So we're now going to do the front legs, and we're using 2mm galvanised wire. So wire for front legs, 2mm galvanised wire. That's your template, which I've cut to size. And then you'll notice here it gives you 2 bend points. So I've marked that up, and I'm just going to bend those now. So they will fit, once you've stuffed your legs, they will fit on the inside, and that will be your anchor point to the body. And I've given rough guidance where that will be, so they'll go along there on your legs either side. So there's our legs done. Stuff it to the top of the wire, and the wire, sorry, I've put the wire in either side, so it's just, I can feel it either side down here. So you just slip it down the inside of the leg, and you've stuffed up to the top, but we will adjust that slightly when we fit it to the body. And the wire, I can just feel it down, right down, because obviously the foot's going to go on there, so that needs to be down to the base. Okay, so we're now going to move on to the paws for our squirrel. We're going to do the back paws first. You can see you've got a template there for the back paw. Part of it is wrapped, and then the other part is exposed as its claw. I've got one made up here. It's not quite finished because it's got to be shaped, and the claws have got to be turned down a bit and painted. But that's the inside. And what we're doing is we're going to wrap the fabric around this piece of copper, and this is 2mm copper wire. I bought it from Hobbycraft, the UK, but it's very pliable, so that's why it's easy. You can't use the galvanised wire which you use for the legs and the tail. That's far too heavy, it just won't move. And what we're going to do is going to put our copper right to the edge of our piece of fabric. This is as per the template. So the wrap for the back paw, you need 10 of them. It's well, the size won't matter, but that's your template. And you cut out roughly this corner. And the reason for that is because when it fits under the body, we don't want a lot of bulk of wires all joining. It would be too bulky. So as it's wrapped, it means it's thinner at that point. So we put the piece of copper right on the edge, allowing us, I think it's 1/2 inch for its claw, and then tape that down. I hope you can see this okay. Tape it right on the edge, and then trim off any excess, because that will get in the way when you come to stitch this in a minute. And then you simply roll that over. Maybe tricky to start it off, but once you've got it's nice and tight, then just carry on rolling, keeping that to the edge there. And you see, by having that cut out, it means that the paw is thicker, but the base part ends up being obviously thinner and easier to put underneath the body. So when you get to the end, just pop in a pin into that to keep it in place, and then what I do is just sew them all together. It really doesn't take that long. It might look time consuming, but in fact it's not. So I don't know if you can see on here, but I've sewn them down at the join and try and keep the join underneath. In fact, actually, look, I haven't there. That one's exposed there, but it's not going to matter. But just do a little stitch all the way down to hold the fabric in place, and that's one done. So you need 10 of those, obviously 5 for each finger, each paw. And now we do the front paw, and again it's on the template. You've got the front paw times 2, which is that size, and then the front paw times 2 is that size. So I've done those two ready, but I'll show you how to do them, but very similar to the other paw anyway. So you've got your 2 pieces of copper cut out accordingly, and you lay that central onto your square of fabric, which you've got from these 2 templates as well, a smaller one and a larger one. You can make sure it's fairly even, because this part is the claw. If it isn't, you can always trim it off anyway, but it's best to try and start off with it fairly even. Then put your masking tape on the edge, and trim off the excess. And if you've overlapped it a bit at the top, trim that off as well. And then start rolling in the same way as you did with the back paw. Right to the end, and then use your pin to secure it, and do the same with the other long one, so you end up like this with two pieces, a smaller one and a bigger one. Now you're going to find the middle of this. Do it by eye, but it's you want to find the middle as close as possible, and then you're going to bend that in half, hoping that we've got the middle. Okay, and then close that with your pliers so that it's a nice tight fit. Okay, and then the next one goes round it as well. So again, find the middle, and then with this maybe go round your pencil, and then that should slot inside there. And then we'll adjust the size of these and the shape, but we'll stitch that together like that, so that's its front paw, don't know. But anyway, that's the back paw and the front paw, and we'll come back to that and just adjust them to shape them shortly. So now we have the two front paws done. What you need to do once you've got the four bits together, or the two bent bits together, stitch them at the back to hold them in place, and just go up a little bit along these paws just to hold them in place, and then we will shape those a bit later. So those are actually almost ready to fit. And with the back paw, this was the one I did earlier, and I put this little pad on the back as well. So what you need to do, similar to the back paw or front paw, is to draw the 5 pieces together, and what you need is to have the first 3, the middle 3, the same length, and I would stitch those 2 together nice and tight at the base, just about here, and then stitch that to that side, and then the other one to the other side. So you'll see that this claw is just slightly back, so it sort of finishes where the fabric stops, or starts where the fabric stops there. So you get that feeling of the claws there. So you need to stitch those together at the base, and going up a little bit along the paw, and then if you want to go that far you can put a little pad on the back as well. And that the reason, as I say, the back section is without the wire is so that it's nice and flat to fit on the body. Now I have our completed paws here, and what I've done is I've just given the front paw a bit of shape, so it's the leg will fit on here, so it comes up a little bit and the claws are curved. You could trim those back if you wanted to, and you could either leave them straight, or I've done a curve on there, and then I'll use a nail varnish on there to paint them whatever colour. So you could do it by hand or with the pliers. So what I've done is just go up from there, and then the claw to come down, but do this gently. Certainly don't use the cutting part of this tool, because otherwise you'll snip it off and then you've got to do the whole thing again. And then I've just given the claws a little bit of a curve. But it is quite pliable, this this copper. I don't know if I've mentioned it, but I bought it from Hobbycraft, so it's 2mm copper, so you can see it is very, very pliable. But you wouldn't want to do that too much in case you break it. But I think it was about £4, maybe £5, but you obviously get quite a lot anyway. So that's the 2 front ones done, and then I've done that one. It's just splayed out the paws a little bit, or claws, whatever they're called. So I'll do that on this one as well, and I've gone up a little bit. And then down. And then just curve the claw itself. And now is the time to put the thigh in place and the front legs. I've attached the bar across the middle here where it's suggested, but as I say, that's up to you. I've actually put it on the mark, but it seems right to me. And then I've not finished this off, I've just pinned it in place, because I would like to just check your location of the thigh and your foot. You just need to check that it's going to look alright. The front will always be okay, but just the thigh. You want to make sure that that thigh goes in the place where that it looks like the claw is actually coming out the sort of the leg of the actual thigh itself. So that would be about right. You don't want that too far up or too far forward, because the lower part here just needs to look like it's the lower part of the leg. So I think that's about right. So it's a good idea to have your paws done before you attach the thigh, so you can get that positioning right. And simply pin that in place and then stitch round it. I'm just going to do a rough sort of back stitch all the way around there, so that's kept in place. And before you actually finish the all the way around, just make sure that it's stuffed nicely and firm in place. Before you finish, you might want to jiggle things around, and that's what it looks like at the base. So you've got a bit of a flat bottom there, and the paws will go on like that. We might be able to put a covering on top of that anyway, as well. But so I'm going to now stitch around here. I've checked that the legs are all right with the paws, so that's going to come off, and then I'm going to patch the whole of the body. I'm going to patch the head, the body, and once I've stitched these in place, I'm going to patch all around there and its bottom as well. Also, at this stage, you can patch the tail as well. So that's going to keep me busy for a little while, but it's best to use, I think I said this, to use a finished fabric for the front legs, because they're a bit tedious to go behind on those. Oh, well actually, if I take that off, you can see where that's how the legs are fitted, but of course that's got to be stitched on in at a later time. So we remove all that. So now you can see that you've actually got quite a nice area to stitch, to patch. So all the head, body and the thighs. And then once we've done that, we'll fit the front legs. Don't want to have them fitted now because it makes it awkward for patching. You want it to be as clear as possible for the patch at the moment. Just thought I'd show you what he looks like now with his thighs in place. So all I've done is a little stitch all the way around and underneath there. And don't worry if it's a bit puckery, because you'll be covering it with patches anyway. And it's a squirrel. Remember, you know, if things don't go quite right, it doesn't matter, because we're all different. All squirrels are different as well. It's not as if it's a garment you're making. So yeah, I know I like them to all look a bit different anyway. So that's how he looks from the back. And I just wanted to say also that while I was in France, I'd been buying this crochet, I think it's crochet thread, and I find that actually is really quite good for putting the patches on. Usually I use the embroidery threads that you get in like the loops, but I think these were about €4 and there's a huge amount in there, so I'll see how I go. I'm not sure whether to use the brown or the red, but I'm going to start patching now. I've been very busy doing lots of patching, so I've completed the body, a little bit there, but that doesn't matter because the legs will be covering that up anyway, front legs. And I've also done the tail. So I've done the tail up to about this point, so that's maybe 2-3 inches away from the stitching, and we'll go through that shortly. So now I think it's best to do the face, because you're going to be working quite close to it, and without the front legs and its tail in the way, it's much easier to do it. So I wanted to just show you the nose. I've done a very, just when I'm patching and working on the animal, I usually put sort of false eyes and the nose in just to get an idea of the feel for the shape and the look of the animal. So that was just a nose I quickly mocked up, and I'll take that off. So the nose itself, I don't seem to have it to hand at the moment, but the actual pattern piece is quite small, so I don't know whether you can see there, but I've penciled round it, and that is the pattern piece for the nose. But it's best to do your embroidery work with a bigger piece of fabric. So on your plain fabric, mark it out, stitch the dart and leave it like that so that you can do your embroidery, because it is much easier than a tiddly bit. Once you've done your embroidery, and I've just done chain stitch, I'm not much of an embroiderer, but you might know other ones. Obviously try and get it nice and even, and the line between the nose and the mouth is up through that dart. So yeah, do your embroidery round there and then cut it out, and where I've marked it on the reverse, I can cut round that line and then start fitting it onto the squirrel. I've just I've cut it out so that it's a smaller size now, and I've pinned it in place. I've got a bit of wadding that I'll start stitching round here, and I'm going to do this in self colour so it's not seen. You may want to do it in contrast, but I'm going to do it in self colour. As I'll start here, going round the bottom to the base, and then I shall just put a bit of wadding in to give it a bit more definition before I close up the top. Now with the ear, I did say just cut 2 out of finished fabric on the pattern. I might adjust that to say cut 4, but it really depends on what fabric you use. This is just a fairly thin cotton. So I've actually cut 4, so that's 2 with an inner fabric and 2 of the outer fabric. I've done a very narrow seam there, probably only about 5mm or less. So turn it through, and then fold it inboard. So I'm having the brown on the inside. So I'll fold it inboard and then attach it on the corner, and you can fiddle around with that. What I might do is a couple of stitches just where's a pin, just on the inside there, so it just brings it down a bit and a bit closer, bit like that. And then once you're happy with the inside, stitch obviously round the back as well to keep it in place. I'll do that, and then it'll be onto the eyes. So I'm going to stuff the nose and stitch around the outside and put the ears on, and then it'll be doing the eyes. So I finished our squirrel's nose, stitched around the outside in a self colour so that it's not so obvious. Put his ears on, and that's just stitched around the outside again. And now I've just put a thread using the longer needle to go through his eye socket, and just cinched it in a little bit and put a piece of fabric to hold it in place, so I can trim off that fabric. And then I have these are 10mm plastic eyes, very cheap. I don't know where I got these from now, probably eBay. I've got a bit of black felt behind it just to make it look a bit larger, and I've got a circle of this fabric. So they're all going to be glued together and then glued with hot glue or fabric glue into that circle there, and then stitched in the same way as we've done around the nose. So it gives him quite a lot of definition around his eye. On these eyes did have stalks on, so I clipped those off with the pliers, so that's going to go on to that bit, and then onto the other eye, the other socket. And again, I'll do that in self colour because I don't want to draw attention to the fact that it's stitched on in place. So there's my eye with a black felt background to it. There's a circle of this chest fabric and what I've used for the nose. So that's going on there, and then will be sewn onto the socket. So having fitted the eyes and stitched all the way around, that's his little face completed. Ears, nose and eyes. So to recap, I cinched in with a piece of fabric and a thread going through the eyes to hold them slightly closer, and then I've glued the lighter background and then the eye onto the black felt, and that's been glued in place, and I've just done a stitch all the way around the eye itself. So now we're moving on to the front legs, and to start with, well, first of all, you can see that I did change the fabric. I wasn't keen on the other one because it had green in it, which I haven't used any other green. Oh, I have a bit there, but it didn't look right. So I've changed it for this fabric, and the only thing is I've I made the decision to put a mark there where roughly to join it, but of course once you've patched under there, you may not see it. In fact, I could just see, I could lift up this patch and see, but it's pretty obvious where you want to put your front legs anyway, and you can see they just bend slightly forward. So I've put a couple of pins in there to attach the bar to the body, and then I've pulled up either side, like the shoulder part. I'm actually going to put other patches, that's what I just took off there, but these are going to go on to this to give it a bit more variegation. And then all you simply do is stitch this bar in place, go backwards and forwards over there nice and firmly so that's really secure in place, and then fiddle around with this until you're happy and it's in the right position, and then stitch around here, stuffing as you go, so you've got a nice smooth transition between the leg and the actual body. And then you'll be putting, just to disguise that, you'll be putting a few more patches on to just cover up a little bit of the stitching if necessary. So I'll go ahead and do that. So I've done one leg, and it's surprising how much more wadding you can stuff up there. So you want to get a nice sort of firm join there and underneath as well. And I don't know if I can show you where I've stitched it, but you need to get quite close to that bar, otherwise it will slide backwards and forward. So go back and forth over that bar so it's nice and secure. And then on the inside, you've obviously had to trim this down so that it will sort of fit in there. And then when you've done that, just stitch that over top so then that disguises your wire. So as I say, I've done one leg, and you can still stuff a little bit more at the bottom, but we're going to put the feet on there shortly anyway. So I've got to do this leg as well. So you can see where I will start stitching on here, patching it on, and then begin to stuff so you get that nice sort of rounded section at the top of the leg. So we've now completed the front leg attachment. So they're nice and firm, and I've sewn all the way around the top, and I've finished off the underneath by using the excess fabric to cover over the wire, so that's quite well hidden there now. And then I'm going to add a few bits of extra colour around here, and maybe on here, just to help disguise that seam, and so that it's not all in one sort of fabric. So now we're going to turn to the tail. I've just put this in place just so you can see roughly how it goes. The top part of the wire that comes through here, it's obviously about 4 inches long. You've got the excess. Turn it back on itself using your pliers and pin it in place there. And it's up to you what angle you want. You might have it lower down, higher, or more of a curve. And then at the base, we've got I've just pinned this in place for the moment. We've got the other wire, which is from this side of the tail, comes down here like this, and then if you do it at right angles, that will secure it in both respects, as far as going up or down or left or right. And then what you need to do is to pull back the shell fabric and stuff this area all around here so that it's a nice transition, and then pull the shell fabric back and this will take a little while. You've got to, I mean, there's a lot more that can go in there. Yeah, I'm just trying to give you an idea on how to do it. But once you've got a nice sort of, and that's got to be a lot fuller, then you can stitch this in place. In fact, stitch that first anyway, so good, nice stitches all the way around it, and try to go not only round that side but also up there as well, because doing that bit there secure, it will stop the tail sagging. And again, underneath, along here and along there, then stuff as we're doing here as much as you can so it's really nice and firm and a nice sort of finish. And then you're going to pull these two excess pieces over and pin them in place, and underneath as well. Once you've stuffed that really nicely, pull that down and pin that in place, and then again you can stuff more under here and more under this side, and gradually you'll get a nice transition there. And then pin that in place nice and close, and then that will be stitched all the way down there. It might, you might want to do that 1/2 inch inboard, and then we can trim off the excess fabric, but that's how it's going to look. So bend your wire to contour the body, so this one coming up and this one coming down, and by doing it in an L shape it will stop it from going side to side and back to full and front. This one then back, bend it back so you've got this loop, and then you can stitch that in place either side, and this point here, this anchor point, which is quite important. Once that's stitched in place, start stuffing and pulling and pinning at the same time, and along here. And once you've got that nice and firm, stitch close by. I'll show you mine when I've sorted it, and then you can finish off the patching and go over these edges, which will blend it all in very nicely. I've finished the tail, the fitment, so you've got the curve there, and that's stitched round nice and securely in place, and then that one there secure so it won't go forward or side to side. And then the excess fabric, the shell fabric, I've stitched it in place and removed trimmed it off either side, and I've stuffed this nice and firmly here. And again, you can always move the stuffing around a little bit with a pin if you find that you've got it a little bit lumpy, so to flatten it out. So all you need to do now is to continue down here and over this join, and then you might need a little bit, it depends how, this seems to be quite hard, this wire to bend, so you might just need a little bit of stuffing over there and then a patch to even that out. And the base we're going to be putting the feet on soon anyway. Right, and I think that is the next job actually, to put the feet on. So camera angle's not very good for this, but the front paws, make sure that that is really nice and firm. I can feel the wire just there, and that you're going to fit the front paws on like that, pulling that nice and tight. And if you can, once you've gone halfway round, if you can get any more stuffing in there to make it firmer, then do so. So that's going to go on like that. In fact, actually I quite like this copper colour as it is. You can use nail varnish, or if you've got acrylic glue, but I found nail varnish was brilliant, and there's so many different colours, black, browns and greys you could use. So then the back one, with the back one you want to be sure that you put it in a position and stitch it in place, so that when you do lift it up it actually is remains in place. So camera angle's not very good here, so I'm going to be putting it about there, and the front one there, and then attach that underneath there, so that the top of those claws are attached to the base itself. Anyway, I'll show you that shortly. Yep, I'll do that first. There we are. There's a little Cedric squirrel. Those feet are on. Back paws, front paws. His tail's attached. I've put another little covering over the extended parts of those paws, and I've put his whiskers on. This is actually a bit of sort of plastic wire which I tried to coat with a felt tip pen, because my husband's fishing line, the brown fishing line I usually use, is actually in his toolbox in France, so I'll change those later. But there you go, all done.